Welcome back to Glamour Unfiltered, hosted by me, Josh Smith. And today we are joined by the new queen of period dramas. It's Bridgerton's Phoebe Dynevor. Woo, 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 woo!
Woo! Hello, darling.
Hi, babe. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, babes. Well, we are going to get into it. Those courses are coming off and the chat is about to flow like Lady Whistledown's papers, isn't it?
It's about to go down.
Let it be known, if there's a scandal, I shall uncover it and share every last detail.
It completely turns this period drama theme on its head. Like, it totally destroys it, rebuilds it, and makes it completely fresh. For you, when you first got approached about it, and when you were filming it, what made it feel so modern? What made it feel so contemporary? And what really made you feel like it actually reflected the world you actually live in a way as well?
If we're not seeing ourselves reflected in art, then we're not going to engage with it. And I think it's so true, and it's what's so brilliant about Bridgerton. For me, just that feminism doesn't come in one, it doesn't come in one form. It comes in different forms, and Daphne isn't your obvious feminist, but she's still in charge of her own destiny.
What are the biggest differences you're seeing in those kind of scripts that you were getting, say, like 5 years ago, as you're getting now? Like, what are the nuances in that kind of sexist dialogue that's changed?
Well, I mean, using it with Bridgerton, for example, and what was so brilliant about the script is that it is so much the female gaze within the story. Like, there's shots, and I've seen it a million times, watching Bond films and watching these sort of male-driven films where the man is laid back in bed with his hands behind his head, and the woman is, you see the silhouette of her back, and she's naked, and he's just watching her, and the woman is the sexualized object. And in Bridgerton, we flip that, and it's so interesting to watch, because it is very much Daphne's perspective of Simon, and her seeing him and aspects of his body, and her feeling that sexual drive towards him, which it's so funny, because until you see that, or until you experience doing it that way, you don't really realize that actually it has been the other way for so long. So finally, I think that's shifting, and we're reading scripts that are turning it on its head.
And I mean, like, one of the episodes is very focused on that aspect of the story. And I mean, how difficult do you find it to do those kind of sex scenes where you have to just be like, right, here we go, we're doing it? Like, how difficult do you find those scenes, and how do you build yourself up to doing them? Because I kind of feel like it must be sort of liberating in some ways, and also just almost like so in your head at the same time as well.
Yeah, I think weirdly the hardest scenes that I had to do were the ones on my own that were quite sexually driven, because there's no one to sort of vibe off. Those scenes were so essential to Daphne's journey, as a woman, and finding her sexuality, and sex for the sake of sex is fine. But when it really feeds the story, which it did for Daphne, and it does, it is very much her coming of age and her sexual awakening, then it all felt like it really needed to be there. I've done sex scenes in the past, and it's all just like, action, go, just do it. Whatever you want to do, just do it. And you feel very out of control when that's happening. But with a coordinator on set, we blocked everything. We rehearsed everything like a fight scene. So I knew exactly where Reggae was going to put his hand at what point. And actually, it really frees you up, because there isn't that weird thing of, oh, what's he going to do now? And also just me as a woman coming into my own and being able to say, actually, that I don't feel too comfortable with that. And we've been given more power to be able to say no as well. And I think for a long time, that wasn't a thing. Women weren't allowed to speak up.
Because I think your character in Bridgerton isn't really seeking approval from anyone apart from herself. And that's the kind of journey she does go on along the way. What do you think she's taught you about yourself? And what have you learned from her?
But I mean, there's a scene in Bridgerton where, and it was quite funny because it was my least favourite scene to film and one of the most difficult scenes for me. And it was when Daphne walks down the stairs to greet the prince, and everyone in the ball turns and they look at her, and they look at, all the background were watching me walk down these stairs. And it was actually the most uncomfortable scene ever. I just absolutely hated filming it because I didn't feel like that. I didn't feel very confident that day. I think I woke up and I just wasn't feeling like in my power, in my strength that day. So that scene to shoot was so uncomfortable. And watching it and being like, oh, okay, you look the exact opposite of what you're feeling is so interesting. And I think that happens in life a lot, where what we're portraying on the outside is usually very different to what's going on the inside. I was super nervous about leading, a Netflix show and Shondaland being involved, and there was it was nerve-wracking. It was a big deal, and Daphne's story is the first one. But as soon as I met all of the cast, I mean, I know people say this on interviews all the time, but we genuinely are like so close, all of us, and we all got on so well. And especially the Bridgerton family, we were literally like a family on set, which was amazing.
How amazing was that wardrobe experience like for you? Was it just like everything and more? So
I was living in LA when I got the call that I had the job, and I think the first thing I did when I touched down in England was have a wardrobe fitting. And I walk into this like full warehouse of costumes, and there's like so many incredible designers, and it's basically a factory just for Bridgerton making all these costumes. And I was like, oh my God. And it's when it hit me. I mean, I had over 100 dresses, I think. So it was pretty mad.
How did you cope with having the constraining garments underneath as well? Because how's that alter the way you perceive yourself?
I was wearing a half corset, thank God. So not the full-blown thing. And it's weird. Yeah, it's weird because your boobs look very different. They look very different because they're pushed up to your ears. So you're like, okay, yeah, the push-up bra, but even worse than that. And I don't really wear bras, so it was interesting to see my boobs in that condition. You'd take it off and you'd have marks, and they were uncomfortable and tight, and you'd think, thank God we've come a long way from wearing these, because and they had, actually it might have just been, but they would have nighttime ones as well. I mean, it's crazy what women had to go through.
You've been on this sort of self-esteem journey like everyone has in their lives. But if you go back to a time in your life where you could be a friend to yourself and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be and what would you say?
It would probably be about 3 years ago. And I would say, everything that is meant to be will be. And it's not meant for you, honey. And trust me, in 3 years, you will thank the Lord that happened. It was tough at times. And I was finding myself, and I went through points of really, really low self-esteem, particularly in my early 20s, of just like, why is this not working? What do I need to do? Who do I need to be for this to happen? And I think that's really dangerous when you start going down that road and trying to change yourself. The last 2 years, really, for me, have been when I've grown up a lot and found myself and sort of known, okay, this is who I am, and I'm going to push for that. And that's when things started happening. When I got confidence in myself, when I was like, okay, this is it. This is who I am. And that's when it seemed to click. Like everything just clicked into place a little bit. And I still have days where I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to be me today, because I am quite self-aware anyway, but in the sense of like what your brain is telling you. You know, like I think when you're younger, you listen to what your brain is telling you. If your brain tells you, you know, your hair's not very nice that day, you're going to believe it.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you start to realize, actually, you know, that isn't, I don't have to listen to that. And I can acknowledge it and go, oh, okay, that's me feeling insecure today because I'm a bit tired or whatever. And I'm not going to listen to it.
And it's always important to remember that a negative can ultimately turn into such an empowering positive, right? Has there been, like, say, like a no or something that's happened, like a negative thing that's actually turned out to be a positive thing in retrospect?
You know, this industry is so full of rejection. Like, for the last 10 years of my life, I've been going up for every single part under the sun. And I'm so grateful to have got Bridgerton, and it's so interesting when you watch people's success, because you do only see the success aspect. You don't see all of the no's and the letdowns, and there are so many, particularly in this industry. But it shapes you, the rejection, and makes you stronger and tougher. And I really appreciate all the no's that I've had in my life and all the rejection that I've had in my life, because I wouldn't be sat here today. So I think self-worth is such a valuable thing to have, and sometimes I just think it's really important for us to have it regardless of the noise around us, because, you know, if we're constantly waiting for someone to say you're worthy for us to feel worthy, then, you know, that doesn't lead to a very happy life all round. So I think you've got to feel the self-worth first, and then the rest will come.